Hey everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel. It's been a minute since I've done a sit-down video because I just finished, or I guess a few weeks ago now, have finished up a 6-week trip where I went to Chile, Argentina, and my big cruise to Antarctica where I got to spend my birthday hitting my 7th continent while turning 30, which is just wild. I still can't believe I did that. I'm in the middle of editing all this footage for you and getting it out there, and I just finished editing my EF Patagonia series, and I always like to do a end of the series kind of wrap-up video talking about my experience doing this trip, because I know there's a lot when it comes to considering a trip and wanting to know how it goes, what someone thinks of the trip, what they do, and now all this and all that. So if you want to see what I actually did, go ahead and watch those videos. They're going to be all up by the time this is up. And then this is just that kind of general review at the end of the trip. So I have my phone out because I take notes and can refer back to them. This is just kind of in a random order, but these are the things that I thought about with Patagonia. So first off, I've done a lot of different trips with EF. I did love the Patagonia trip. Definitely it is a hiking based, nature based active trip. So if that is your vibe, if you don't really want to see the city at all and you want to be out in nature, you want to be active, you want to be hiking, this is the trip for you. The views and the hikes we did were absolutely gorgeous. For me personally, I know everyone is different, but I love a good mix of city and nature. And because we're flying so far, because you know most of everyone is coming from the United States, it takes a long time to get to the bottom of the world. And so there's going to be a lot of travel days, so just know that probably 60% of the trip is going to be travel days, especially coming from the United States to South America and back, and then the travel days in between the different hikes because they're not all close together. And also, you do start in Santiago, Chile, which Santiago is the biggest city in Chile, and then end in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Buenos Aires is the biggest city in Argentina, but you don't really see the city much at all. You might have the first day and then the last day free and you can explore a little bit, but for my own preference, I ended up extending ahead of time and after, which is always an option and super easy to do with EF, but if I were just to book this trip, I would have wanted to have a little bit more time in the start and end of every city. I know this is called Patagonia and that's what people book it to see, but I still feel like there should have been some sort of guided tour, some more time spent in the cities, because I hadn't been to either of those cities and I'm assuming most people going on this trip haven't either. So another note when it comes to packing, because that can always be stressful and I still get really stressed when I pack for trips, no matter how many of these I do, is, and I feel like a lot of people say this for so many different travel tours and everything, is to wear layers. When we went, it was summer in South America. For Buenos Aires and for Santiago, the cities, they're more north, so they're closer to the equator. And summer there, it was hot. But then when we were actually in Patagonia, which is south, I actually have a map behind me. So Santiago and Buenos Aires are here, and then Patagonia is way down here. So, here's the equator. So when you're south, the closer you get to the equator, or when you're north, the closer you get to the equator, this is the hottest part of the world, right? And so when you're south and you go below the equator, the further south you go, the colder it gets. So it's going to be a lot colder here than mid-country. So here you're going to be wearing summer clothing if you go during their summer, which is our winter in the United States or in the northern hemisphere. But then down here it was cold. I would say it's pretty close to Seattle fall and winter. It was kind of 50s mostly, maybe sometimes a bit colder, and especially with the winds, there were certain cities where it was really windy and it did get quite chilly, especially when it comes to also hiking. When you're in Patagonia itself, you may start early in the morning and it's cold and you're not warmed up or anything like that, and it's again in the 50s and maybe cloudy or whatever, or maybe rainy, you never know, you're out in the outdoors in the elements. And then as you start hiking, you get warm. I will say for me, I learned pretty early on when it comes to layers and hiking, less is more. You will get warm pretty quickly, and then you don't want to have to be lugging around layers of clothing. So for me, I would bring like my main like shirt obviously, and then something super thin like this, or like a thin rain jacket, and that was about it. And I was always pretty happy with my decision. Okay, I'm back. If I've shifted at all with my framing, my memory card ran out of space. As I was saying, when it comes to a lot of EF trips, I always like to bring a cute outfit or two for, I'm not much of like a going out person, but I like to always at least try to, like, for one of the nights. And that's when you want to like maybe dress up a little bit, or for the welcome dinner, the farewell dinner, because those always happen on every EF trip. And those I've noticed sometimes people dress up for and sometimes they don't. And it's hard to gauge because you're either solo or you're with a friend or two, but you don't know everyone else and what they're doing. But for this trip, because it's a hiking trip, I could have brought nothing that's cuter than just like athleisure, and that would have been perfectly fine. No one dressed up at all. Most of the girls didn't wear any makeup at all. Another note that I made on my phone is that we were told it's best not to drink the tap water. And what was really nice on this trip, not every EF trip is like this, but for this particular trip, we got a free water bottle, maybe two, every single day of the trip. We would get on the bus, whether it's to, you know, drive to our hike or drive to the next city, and we would get a water bottle. And yeah, that was just such a nice like addition to not have to worry about that unless you drink a lot of water and need to get more, which I sometimes did, but having that free water bottle a day was perfect. And then another thing I wanted to know going back to like travel time is just know, because you're going so far south, you're going to almost basically the end of the world, the bottom of the world. There's going to be a lot of travel time, so just know that you might spend the first like literally 2 days of your trip essentially traveling and then like getting to the hotel and getting situated, and kind of the same coming back. And then once you're actually in the trip itself, like you've had your welcome dinner, you've met the group, and you're starting and getting ready to like do the trip, some people have complained about not having enough hiking time, which I can understand, because I'd say we had like 3 or 4 main days of hiking out of like this like entire length of the trip. That seems like maybe not a lot, but at the same time, again, hiking can be exhausting, and also on top of like the time change and then the travel and being jet lagged, you know, it's a lot. So it's good to take time and be slow. And I personally liked having the rest days to travel and, you know, physically rest up. But I'd say for the most part, I've noticed a trend, like the first 2 days, we would basically fly down. We would fly from the United States to Santiago and then have like part of a day there, have the dinner, and the next day you fly down to the bottom and the start of the Patagonia trip. So by the time you get to the Patagonia region, you're basically on like day 3 of the trip. And then from there you have like travel day by bus, and then hike day. Travel day, hike day, travel day, hike day, until finally you reach your last stop before Buenos Aires, and then you fly up to Buenos Aires and have like a day there and then fly out that evening or whatever. So it can be a lot, but also, again, I personally liked the bus time because I could use that time to sleep on the bus, use that time to just be an introvert and like do my own thing, be in my own little space, because I need that personally. Also, of course, because you're hiking, you're going to be out in the elements like I mentioned. So along with bringing layers, make sure you bring rain gear in case it does rain. For me, we got pretty lucky and we did not have any rain on any of our hikes. The only days it rained, and it wasn't even that many, and there was no day where it like rained completely, was when we were traveling. I remember when we were crossing the border from Chile to Argentina, it did end up raining, but we were just on the bus that day and we were like crossing the border. We just had to get out to like physically be in a building to give the passports and then hop back in. But we got pretty lucky. But again, you never know, every trip's going to be different. I did bring with me rain pants, which I found on Amazon. I brought like a rain jacket and I didn't have to use those, thankfully. I also brought with me micro crampons, which are, I guess, the little like stubs that you hook on your hiking boots, and then it just gives you a bit more traction. And if the weather is a bit more rainy, again, gloomy, wet, whatever, You may want to wear those on some hikes. And again, your tour guide will tell you, like, I didn't know I had to bring micro crampons, and then I was told before the tour and I quickly got them on Amazon. I didn't end up using them, but that's because it wasn't really muddy or anything. I also didn't have like proper hiking boots, and so I had to go out and get hiking boots, and I bought the, like, I think it's called like Lowy. They were, for me personally, super comfortable. I had no issues with them, thankfully. I do recommend those boots, and like on REI's website or whatever, they're like one of the most highly rated hiking shoes. Another thing that I wrote as well is the money situation. So for both countries, I brought like just USD cash with me to exchange. Some that I plan to do in Chile and some in Argentina, because they use pesos, but they use like their own versions of pesos, Chilean pesos, Argentinian pesos. And for both places, being able to exchange cash was pretty easy, but also both places took card almost everywhere. So those two methods worked pretty well, and they took like the tap system. And then my friend, she had like American Express, and this, at least in the cities and like the Patagonia spots we went to, they took it everywhere as well. Buenos Aires, their money situation, like there's a lot of like inflation going on, and it's just like always changing, so it might be very much different with like how much USD is to Argentinian or even Chilean for me than it is for when you go. But I will say it was very difficult in at least Argentina to take out and withdraw cash from the ATM, and I don't recommend doing it if you don't need to. The only time I really needed to is because Argentina was after Chile. I'd used like my cash already, and I needed to use it for tips. But then I realized like the EF tour guide and the bus driver, like most of them prefer USD because it's just more reliable and like stable. It's not fluctuating constantly like Argentinian pesos. My friend wanted to book a horseback riding tour post EF, still in Argentina, and they only took cash. And I found out in the ATM, you can only at one time withdraw 15,000 Argentinian pesos, which at the time is equal to about $15. And every time you withdraw money, you're charged $9. So you are charged $9 every time you take out $15 from your account, which is absolutely insane. Many times my card wouldn't even let me take out money. I kept getting on the bank like insufficient amount, which I was like, I have more than $15 in my bank account. That's not true. And they just like were being finicky and not working with me. And in the end, I had to do this, like my friend did this for the horseback riding thing, and I had to do this to pay for laundry, and the laundry was like $5, but they only took cash. So keep cash also for like laundry. Most like food places or anything touristy, or the like tours themselves typically take card. My friend with the horse thing, she just found like a family-owned business, but I had to go to a Western Union. And because I'd never gone to one before, I opened up a new account, and with that, there's no like fee associated with it because it was my first transfer, and I had to wire transfer myself money and then go to this little Western Union around the corner from the hotel. The amount of effort I had to go through in order to get $5 in cash to give to the laundry place, which was absolutely absurd. So I recommend bring USD with you and try to like keep it for things that you may need, like laundry, again, tipping, any tours that only take cash, or if you happen to be in a restaurant that only takes cash. But usually that was not the case. Usually you could pay in card and it wouldn't be a big deal. And then another note is the language barrier. So I've been to a few other countries in South America. I've been to Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, and I will say Chile and Argentina has a lot less English speakers than the other South American countries I've been to, which is fine. It just meant that it was harder for me and people in my tour group to communicate that weren't Spanish speakers. I took Spanish in high school. That was a long time ago, and my Spanish is very rusty, but I brought it out a little bit, and it was able to get me a little bit through like trying to order food or asking where the bathroom is or things like that. But also just know that in Chile and Argentina, there's a lot less English speakers. Even in the cities, you will find them, but it's like there's a good chance if you go to a restaurant and you want to order, they don't know English, so you're gonna have to bring out any Spanish you know, or Google Translator. I have that app and that's really useful. And then I also had a couple of somewhat scary instances happen on this tour. It's nothing specific to EF or even, I would say, this part of the world. It can happen anywhere, but just as a reminder, the first thing, I had extended my Santiago trip about 3 days before the start of my EF trip. And when it comes to your phone, sometimes you need your phone to use for navigation or things like that. My friend had gone to a little market. It was like a Sunday or something, and I was like gonna catch up with her. She just got an early start, and I was using my phone to navigate, and I'm not gonna lie, I was also, I think, like messaging a friend as well, but I had my phone out. But this pop socket saved me because people like to snatch phones. I'm sure you've seen this or have heard of it, or hopefully not, but maybe experienced it. And I was just walking down the street, broad daylight, middle of the day, middle of the city, there's people around. And I heard this motorcycle, because there's a good amount of like delivery drivers that use motorcycles to deliver food. And I was like, that sounds really close, but like I'm on the sidewalk. I'm trusting that they're like just close by, but they're not gonna like run into the sidewalk. And this was behind me. And then all of a sudden I'm like this, and I have my pop socket out, my hands like in between, and this person goes like this and tries to grab the phone while they're on this moped going past me. And it all happened so fast, I just like gasped, and I ended up like him grabbing my phone. It made me drop my phone, but because I had the pop socket in between my fingers, he wasn't like able to grab it. And I'm so thankful, because imagine your like start of this 1.5-month trip abroad, and on day 2, this is before EF started, you would have lost your phone, your way of communicating, your way of entertaining yourself, directions, like everything. Like our lives are on our phones. If you have your phone out in public, just be aware of your surroundings. I was aware of the moped, but I was trusting it was just like being close to me and like driving past. No. If you need to have your phone out, just be vigilant. Maybe have a strap, have a pop socket. Honestly, I just love having pop sockets, and it saved my phone. And then as for my other thing that had happened, actually this happened beforehand. This all like, it was just the beginning of our trip was a rough start, and then it got better. But me and my friend had landed in Santiago, Chile, and we were exhausted. We've been traveling for a long time. We just wanted to get to the hotel. It was like morning. We'd been traveling overnight. And also Santiago was like 5 hours ahead of Pacific time in the US. And we got to the airport, and we were figuring out how to get to the hotel. And my Uber app was being weird and wanted me to like add a payment. It was just my Uber app was being weird, and my friend didn't have service and couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi at the airport. So we ended up, instead of like me trying to figure out the Uber app, which I did after a little bit, but I was just so tired. I was like, you know, let's just like use one of these many men out in the like main area of the airport. They seem official. They have like their company logo and this and that. And so we follow this one guy, and he takes us to a driver in the garage, and then he tries to like charge our cards, and he told us the money. He showed the machine with like the amount, and he tried charging our cards, and our cards right away like declined. Finally, we ended up just paying cash because we had cash on us. And then we find out literally while on the car ride or taxi ride to the hotel, they were trying to charge us an obscene amount of money. And I guess he showed us the amount, but then actually tried to charge us more. So our, bank companies thankfully like caught on to this. Because for me, I'm trying to remember, I think they were trying to charge me several $1,000s. And my friend, they were literally trying to charge her $1 million USD. She does not have that much in her bank account. And yeah, it's just, and it was this whole thing, like, because of that, one of her cards got suspended, so she had to rely on her one other card, which was the American Express, and luckily they took it there. And then for me, my card was also suspended, but I was able to get it running, like, and working within a day or two. But at first, I used Bank of America. They were saying that I had to, like, go into a Bank of America to verify it's me, to verify the charges, blah, blah, blah. And I guess for me, when it had said, like, did you authorize this charge? I said no, when I should have said yes. because I technically did say yes to it, but they wouldn't have charged it. But anyway, it's just the whole story that's confusing. And I was telling them, like, I'm in Santiago, I can't go to a Bank of America, and that was a really stressful way to start the trip. But we were able to figure it out, and then like within 2 days my phone almost gets stolen. So traveling can be stressful and difficult. You're out of your comfort zone, that's no shock. But just remember, like, if you're first off going to be using your phone out and about, have it secure, be mindful of your surroundings. It sounds obvious now, but when you're traveling sometimes it's easy to forget. And I also have that mindset of like optimism and like it won't happen to me, and then, you know. And then when it comes to like Ubers or like transportation to and from the airport, like use something like certified and verified like Uber if it's, you know, in the country. If not, like the actual official, there'll usually be like a taxi stand. Just use something official like that. If you're traveling with EF and you buy flights with them, they will provide transportation to and from the airport, so you won't have to worry about that. The last thing I just wanted to say is, would I recommend doing and going to Patagonia specifically with EF, or would I recommend it just doing it on your own or with a different company? And I would say, EF does not pay me for these like videos or anything like that. I would say yes. All these things I just talked about, the scary things, this all happened before EF started, and that's like, you know, it can happen anywhere, anytime. But the actual trip itself, I just feel like because Patagonia is more remote, it's further away, it's not like a Europe trip that's easy to get to, and there's like public transport, and, you know, a lot of people in Europe speak English or this and that. This is like a country where there's not a lot of English speakers. It's more remote, it's longer distances from point A to point B, and I just don't even know, like, getting all the logistics and like finding a bus from like this hiking area to this hiking area to this area would just seem like such a stressful thing that I don't want to have to deal with if I don't have to. And EF's got it. And it just, you get a group of people that's included when you book these trips. And even though I went with a friend, I was excited to meet new people and make new friends, which I did. And yeah, so I think that's for the most part everything I've written on my notes app and more. So if you want to see what I actually did, watch my videos. But next up is going to be my time in Buenos Aires, because I did EF and then an Antarctica cruise. They don't align perfectly, so I had like 2 weeks in Buenos Aires. So my next videos will be me just doing solo things in Buenos Aires or things with my friend, and then Antarctica, which is so exciting. And thank you so much for watching. I hope that I answer your questions. If you have any more, let me know down below. And as always, I have my code if you want to book with EF. I truly do love the company, and I've had really just good experiences with them overall. And yeah, so thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in a future video of mine. Bye.